This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsa Hone, and today is Monday, and that means it's time for the 556th MTG Top 10. In most episodes of this series, I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. And today, we're going to take a look at 4-mana 5/4s. Before we get into today's video, I do want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Over half of my viewers are unsubscribed, and if you're one of those people, and you've been enjoying my content, hit that subscribe button. Anyway, a 5/4 for 4 mana is a pretty good rate for a creature. This is especially true if that creature comes with some upside. Eligibility for this list is pretty obvious. A creature had to cost 4 mana, have power equal to 5, and have toughness equal to 4. In all, there were 40 cards eligible for this list, and in this video we'll talk about the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A first tier top 8 is worth 2 points. This includes events like Pro Tours, and a second tier top 8 is worth 1 point. This includes events like regional championships. Alright, let's get to the list. At number 10, it is Jetmir, Nexus of Revels. This 4-mana 5/4 is the leader of the Cabaretti in New Capenna, and he has a whole lot of upside on top of that good stat line. He absolutely loves it if you're going wide, offering bigger and bigger upgrades to your board the wider you go. If you have 3 or more creatures, everyone gets +1/+0 in Vigilance. If you control 6 or more, they also get +1/+0 in Trample, and if you control 9 or more, they get an additional +1/+0 in Double Strike. Keep in mind, he buffs himself with all of those effects too. Obviously, your board gets completely insane if you can get all of this online, but achieving the second and third upgrade in 60-card formats isn't exactly easy, but the good news is, even if you're only getting the first part online, you're still getting a great rate. So far, he's seen a bit of play in Standard Naya aggro decks. He's still in Standard right now, but definitely isn't seeing regular play, so he may not gain more points before he rotates. At number 9, it is Ziatora's Envoy. This 4-mana 5/4 comes with Trample and Blitz, and when it damages the opposing player, you get to exile the top card of your library. If it's a land, you can play it, and if it has mana value less than or equal to the damage the Envoy does, you can cast that spell without paying its mana cost. Obviously, that can be incredibly powerful, since you're not only smashing a 5/4 into your opponent's face, you're also getting some serious card advantage. Blitz can allow you to play the Envoy out of nowhere if you really need the trigger too. It has gained points so far in both Standard and Pioneer Jund decks, and it has a decent chance at gaining more points in the future. At number 8, it is Kragenwick Cremator. When this 4-mana 5/4 enters the battlefield, you discard a card at random and do damage equal to that card's mana value to a planeswalker or player. While discarding a card can sometimes be a downside, the Cremator does a pretty good job of making sure you get some value out of it, and decks that use the Cremator are particularly good at abusing it. Kragenwick Cremator was around for more than a decade before really seeing play anywhere, but that all changed in 2018. Starting that year, it began to see play in modern Eldritch Evolution decks. These were Jund aggro decks with the toolbox angle. The deck could just curve out and beat down, with the Cremator providing nice reach, but Evolution could be used to search up cards useful in a particular situation, and sometimes you wanted to search up the Cremator, like when the only card in your hand was Impervious Greatworm or Galta Primal Hunger. This was one of the coolest decks in Modern for a while, but the Cremator hasn't gained any points since 2020. At number 7, it is Gnarled Professor, a 4-mana 5/4 with Trample that learns when you enter the battlefield. This usually means the Professor draws you a card, even if you can only choose from among lessons in your sideboard. While lessons are generally situational and inefficient, like Containment Breach or Introduction to Annihilation, they do tend to give you a full card worth of value, and having the ability to effectively tutor up certain effects is a great thing to be stapled to an efficient creature. The Professor gained all of its points in Standard mono-green aggro decks. It is seeing some play in Pioneer too, but doesn't have any points in that format so far. At number 6, it is Lumbering Satyr. So far, all of the 4-mana 5/4s we've seen come with upside. Lumbering Satyr's static effect is more of a mixed bag, and more often than not will be more negative than positive. It gives all creatures Forest Walk, and since you're the one who cast the Satyr with your green mana, that probably means you just made all of your opponent's creatures unblockable. Of course, if your opponent has a forest, it also means your creatures are immediately unblockable. This was pretty typical of 4-mana 5/4s in Magic's earlier days. Creatures have become a lot more efficient over the years, but creatures with above-rate stats back then pretty much always came with some sort of downside. It gained all of its points in the Standard of the year 2000. This was a standard that was largely dominated by Fires of Yavimaya decks, which also played the Satyr because it was so good in the mirror. It was basically always unblockable, and if you add haste to the mix, that made it extra spicy. It hasn't gained any points though since 2000. At number 5, it is Soul of Windgrace. This 4-mana 5/4 puts a land from your graveyard on the battlefield when it enters the battlefield and attacks, and he also comes with 3 abilities that let you pay a mana cost and discard a land for value. Obviously, this works out really well, since he can let you get value out of discarding the land, and then also get the land back. He comes with the ability to gain you life for 1 green, or he can rummage for 1 generic and a red, or you can pay 2 generic and a black and discard a land to make him indestructible. Each of these abilities have their place. Sometimes you need the life to outlast an aggro deck, other times you need to dig deeper in your deck, so you go for the second effect, and other times still, you want to rumble with Soul of Windgrace, and holding up the ability to make him indestructible makes him a very powerful attacker. In Standard, the Soul has been played in Jund, midrange, and control decks. It's seen more play in Modern though, where there are more sweet lands it can abuse, like fetch lands, and it can be played alongside other land-loving cards in that format, like Wrenn and 6 and Tireless Tracker, which give you even more value for bringing those lands back. Soul of Windgrace looks well positioned to gain more points, especially in Modern, and has a great shot at moving up the list in the future. At number 4, it is Butcher of the Horde, a 4-mana 5/4 flying demon that can sacrifice your other creatures to gain vigilance, lifelink, or haste. It was played in both Mardu midrange and Mardu aggro decks while it was in Standard, generally alongside creature token generating cards like Goblin Rabblemaster and Hordeling Outburst, which gave you a whole lot of bodies to sacrifice to the Butcher so it could gain all of these keyword abilities when it needed to. So far, the Butcher hasn't gained any points since rotating out of Standard. At number 3, it is Surak the Hunt Caller. This 4-mana 5/4 gives one of your creatures haste every combat, provided you have a total of 8 power or more on the board, and because Surak provides 5 of that power, you're often going to be able to make that trigger happen, and usually the turn Surak comes down, so he usually attacks right away when you're curving out. He was played in a variety of green aggro decks while in Standard, and has also seen a little bit of play in Modern Gruul aggro and Pioneer Golgari aggro. However, he doesn't have any points in any format since 2020. At number 2, it is Shifting Ceratops. This 4-mana 5/4 dinosaur hates blue decks. It's both uncounterable and has protection from blue. You can also pay a single green mana to give it reach, trample, or haste. While it has intermittently seen some main deck play, it's seen a lot more play as a sideboard card since it's so great to bring in against blue decks. So far, it has points in Standard, Pioneer, Historic, and Legacy, and it's likely to keep gaining points going forward. And the number 1 card on the list is Hazoret the Fervent. This was probably a fairly predictable number 1 because it's probably the first card you thought of when you heard 4-mana 5/4, and that's because it's had a ton of success in multiple formats ever since the day it was printed. Like all the Amonkhet gods, it's indestructible, but you have to meet a requirement for its stats to actually matter. In this case, you have to have 1 or fewer cards in your hand. Hazoret helps you out there by letting you discard cards to damage your opponent. It's also usually played in aggro decks, which often have an empty hand by the time they play their 4-drop anyway. This whole package makes for a very aggressive creature that can smash in for hasty, difficult to block damage, and can finish the opponent off with its ability. Hazoret was a heavily played card in Standard red-based aggro decks and was a format-defining card. It's also seen play in other formats, though not at as high of a rate. In Pioneer, it's used played in a variety of red aggro decks. In Modern, it's been played in Jund, Affinity, and Hollow One. In Legacy, it's been played in Dragon Stompy, a mono-red prison deck that aims to lock the game down with things like Chalice of the Void and Ensnaring Bridge, and Hazoret provides the deck a win condition with its direct damage ability. Hazoret is likely to keep gaining points going forward, and is likely to be the number 1 card on this list for the foreseeable future. So, those are the 10 4-mana 5/4s that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. If you want to own any of these super efficient creatures, check out the description where you can find a direct Card Kingdom link for each card that appeared in the video. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it. If you want to make sure you catch future videos, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to catch up on past MTG top 10s, including many more that look at stat lines, you should see some playlists on your screen shortly. Thanks for watching.